I'm just gonna do this. This is my second video. I'm reading the fourth section of The Color Magic. Withal saw it arrive. The bag arced across the room, turning slowly in the air, and burst on the edge of a table. A moment later, gold coins were rolling across the floor, spinning, glittering. A bag of... I assume this bag came from the luggage, but real gold coins? The room was suddenly silent, save for the tiny noises of gold and the whimpers of the wounded. With a curse, Withal dispatched the assassin he had been fighting. "It's a trick," he screamed. "No one move." 30 men and a dozen trolls froze in mid-grope. Then, for the third time, the door burst open. Brockman's gonna kill everyone. 2 trolls hurried through it, slammed it behind them, dropped the heavy bar across it, and fled down the stairs. Why did they do that? Outside there was a sudden crescendo of running feet, and for the last time the door opened. In fact, it exploded, the great wooden bar being hurled far across the room and the frame itself giving way. Door and frame landed on a table, which flew into splinters. It was then that the frozen fighters noticed that there was something else in the pile of wood. It was a box, shaking itself madly to free itself of the smashed timber around it. Oh my god. Did he steal the gold from the luggage, throw it in the window because he knew the luggage would break through? Rincewind appeared in the ruined doorway, hurling another of his gold grenades. It smashed into a wall, showering coins. Down in the cellar, Broadman looked up, muttering to himself, and carried on with his work. His entire spindle-winter supply of candles had already been strewn on the floor, mixed with his store of kindling wood. Now he was attacking a barrel of lamp oil. Those are a lot of things that can catch on fire. That is a lot of things... "In sewer ants," he muttered. Oil gushed out and swirled around his feet. Oh, fuck. Withal stormed across the floor, his face a mask of rage. Rincewind took careful aim and caught the thief full in the chest with a bag of gold. But now Emor was shouting and pointing an accusing finger. A raven swooped down from its perch on the rafters and dived at the wizard, talons open and gleaming. It didn't make it. At about the halfway point, the luggage leapt from its bed of splinters, gaped briefly in midair, and snapped shut. On a raven? It landed lightly. Rincewind saw its lid open again, slightly, just far enough for a tongue, large as a palm leaf, red as mahogany, to lick up a few errant feathers. What the... At the same moment, the giant candle wheel fell from the ceiling, plunging the room into gloom. Rincewind, coiling himself like a spring, gave a standing jump and grasped a beam, swinging himself up into the relative safety of the room with a strength that amazed him. "Exciting, isn't it?" said a voice by his ear. Down below, thieves, assassins, trolls... voiced by his ear, that has to be Two Flower. Down below, thieves, assassins, trolls, and merchants all realized at about the same moment that they were in a room made treacherous of foothold by gold coins and containing something among the suddenly menacing shapes in the semi-darkness that was absolutely horrible. As that one, they made for the door, but had 24 different recollections of its exact position. Above the chaos, or high above the chaos, Rincewind stared at Two Flower. "Did you cut the lights down?" he hissed. "Yes. How come you're up here?" "I thought I'd better not get in everyone's way." Oh, my God. Rincewind considered this. There didn't seem to be much he could say. Two Flower added, "A real brawl. Better than anything I'd imagined. Do you think I ought to thank them? Or did you arrange it?" Rincewind looked at him blankly. "I think we ought to be getting down now," he said hollowly. "Everyone's gone." He dragged Two Flower across the littered floor and up the steps. They burst out into the tail end of the night. There were still a few there were still a few stars, but the moon was down, and there was a faint gray glow to rimward. Most importantly, the street was empty. Rincewind sniffed. Can you smell oil?" he said. Oh boy. Then Withal stepped out of the shadows and tripped him up. At the top of the cellar steps, Broadman knelt down and fumbled in his tinderbox. It turned out to be damp. "I'll kill that bloody cat," he muttered, and groped for the spare box that was normally on the ledge by the door. It was missing. Broadman said a bad word. A lighted taper appeared in midair right beside him. "Here, take this." "Thanks," said Broadman. "Don't mention it." Broadman went to throw the taper down the steps. His hand paused in midair. He looked at the taper, his brow furrowing. Then he turned around and held the taper up to illuminate the scene. It didn't shed much light, but it did give the darkness a shape. "Oh no," he breathed. "But yes," said Death. Oh, God. Rincewind rolled. For a moment he thought Withal was going to spit him where he lay, but it was worse than that. He was waiting for him to get up. I see you have a sword, wizard, he said quietly. I suggest you rise, and we should see how well you use it. You should probably leave. You should probably leave, like right now. Rincewind stood up as slowly as he dared and drew from his belt the short sword he had taken from the guard a few hours and 100 years ago. It was a short, blunt affair compared to Withel's hair-thin rapier. But I don't know how to use a sword, he wailed. Good. You know that wizards can't be killed by edged weapons, said Rincewind desperately. Withel smiled coldly. So I have heard, he said. I look forward to putting it to the test. He lunged. Rincewind caught the thrust by sheer luck, jerked his hand away in shock, deflected the second stroke by coincidence, and took the third one through his robe at hard height. There was a clink. A clink. What does that mean? What? How is that possible? With a snarl of triumph died in his throat, he drew the sword out and prodded again at the wizard, who was rigid with terror and guilt. There was another clink, and gold coins began to drop out of the hem of the wizard's robe. So you bleed gold, do you? Hissed Withel. But have you got gold concealed in that raggedy beard, you little... As his sword went back for his final sweep, the sullen glow that had been growing in the doorway of the broken drum flickered, dimmed, and erupted into a roaring fireball that sent the walls billowing outward and carried the roof 100 feet into the air before bursting through it in a gout of red-hot tiles. Withel stared at the boiling flames, unnerved, and Rincewind leapt. He ducked under the thief's sword arm and brought his own blade around in an arc so incompetently misjudged that it hit the man flat first and jolted out of the wizard's hand. He's so bad at everything. Not everything, though. He did trick everyone to get out of the tavern. Sparks and droplets of flaming oil rained down as Withel reached out with both gauntleted hands and grabbed Rincewind's neck, forcing him down. You did this, he screamed. You and your box of trickery. His thumb found Rincewind's windpipe. This is it, the wizard thought. Wherever I'm going, it can't be worse than here. Excuse me, said Two-Flower. What do you want, Two-Flower? Rincewind felt the grip loosen, and now Withel was slowly getting up, a look of absolute hatred on his face. A glowing ember landed on the wizard. He brushed it off hurriedly and scrambled to his feet. Two-Flower was behind Withel, holding the man's own needle-sharp sword with the point resting in the small of the thief's back. What? Rincewind's eyes narrowed. He reached into his robe, then withdrew his hand bunched into a fist. Don't move, he said. What? Am I doing this right? Asked Two-Flower anxiously. He says he'll skewer your liver if you move, Rincewind translated freely. I doubt it, said Withel. Bet? No. As Withel tensed himself to turn on the Taurus, Rincewind lashed out and caught the thief on the jaw. Withel stared at him in amazement for a moment, and then quietly toppled into the mud. The wizard uncurled his stinging fist, and the roll of gold coins slipped between his throbbing fingers. He looked down at the recumbent thief. Good grief, he gasped. Oh my God. He punched him with gold coins. I just need that. Just take a moment. I can't do this. He looked up and yelled as another ember landed on his neck. Flames were racing along the rooftops of either side of the street. All around him, people were hurling possessions from windows and dragging horses from smoking stables. Another explosion in the white-hot volcano that was the drum sent a whole marble mantelpiece scything overhead. The Widdersham gate's the nearest, Rincewind shouted above the crackle of collapsing raptors. Come on. He grabbed Two-Flower's reluctant arm and dragged him down the street. My luggage. Blast your luggage. Stay here much longer and you go where you don't need luggage. Come on, screamed Rincewind. They jogged on through the crowd of frightened people leaving the area while the wizard took great mouthfuls of cool dawn air. Something was puzzling him. I'm sure all the candles went out, he said. So how did the drum catch fire? I don't know, moaned Two-Flower. It's terrible, Rincewind. We were getting along so well, too. Oh, you weren't at all. Two-Flower... Rincewind stopped in astonishment so that another refugee cannoned into him and spun away with an oath. Getting on? Yeah, it was a great bunch of fellows, I thought. Language was a bit of a problem, but they were so keen for me to join their party. They just wouldn't take no for an answer. Really friendly people, I thought. Rincewind started to correct him, then realized he didn't know how to begin. It would be a blow for old Broadman, Two-Flower continued. Still, he was wise. I've still got the rhino he paid as his first premium. Rincewind didn't know the meaning of the word premium, but his mind was working fast. You In sewer, the drum, he said. You bet Brobman it wouldn't catch fire? Oh yes, standard valuation, 200 rhino. Why do you ask? Rincewind turned and stared at the flames racing toward them and wondered how much of Ankh-Mor pork could be bought for 200 rhino. Quite a large piece, he decided. Only not now, not the way those flames were moving. He glanced down at the tourist. You... He began and searched his memory for the worst word in the Trobe language. The happy little Betrobi didn't really know how to swear properly. You, he repeated. Another hurrying figure bumped into him, narrowly missing him with the blade over its shoulder. Rincewind's tortured temper exploded. You little... Oh my god, so this is the swear he comes up with. You little such as one who, while wearing a copper nose ring, stands in the in the foot bath atop Mount Ra. I'm going to do this. Aruaha, during a heavy thunderstorm, and shouts that Alohura, goddess of lightning, has the facial features of a diseased Uloruaha root. I will never repeat that again. Just doing my job, said the figure, stalking away. Fucking death. Oh my god. Well, death has a sense of humor. Every word fell as heavily as slabs of marble. Moreover, Rincewind was certain that he was the only one who heard them. He grabbed Two-Flower again. Let's get out of here, he suggested. One interesting side effect of the fire in Ankh-Morpork concerns the insurance policy, which left the city through the ravaged roof of the broken drum, was wafted high into the Discworld's atmosphere on the ensuing thermal, and came to Earth several days and a few thousand miles away on a Uloruaha bush in the Betrobi Islands. The simple, laughing islanders subsequently worshipped it as a god, much to the amusement of their more sophisticated neighbors. Strangely enough, the rainfall and harvest in the next few years were almost supernaturally abundant, and this led to a research team being dispatched to the islands by the minor religions faculty of Unseen University. Their verdict was that it only went to show. The fire, driven by the wind, spread out from the drum faster than a man could walk. The timbers of the Widdersham Gate were already on fire when Rincewind, his face blistered and reddened from the flames, reached them. By now he and Two-Flower were on horseback. Mounts hadn't been that hard to obtain. A wily merchant had asked 50 times their worth, and had been left gaping when 1,000 times their worth had been pressed into his hands. They rode through just before the first of the big gate timbers descended in an explosion of sparks. Morpork was already a cauldron of flame. As they galloped up the red-lit road, Rincewind glanced sideways at his traveling companion, currently trying hard to learn to ride a horse. Bloody hell, he thought. He's alive. Me too. Who'd have thought that? Who'd have thought it? Perhaps there is something in this reflected sound of underground spirits. It was a cumbersome phrase. Rincewind tried to get his tongue around the thick syllables that were the word in Two-Flower's own language. Eco-lyrics, he tried. Ecronothics? Economics? That would do. That sounded about right. Several hundred yards downriver, from the last smoldering suburb of the city, a strangely rectangular and apparently heavily waterlogged object touched the mud on the Widdersham bank. Immediately it sprouted numerous legs and scrabbled for a purchase, hauling itself to the top of the bank. The luggage, streaked with soot, stained with water, and very, very angry, shook itself and took its bearings. Then it moved away at a brisk trot, the small, incredibly ugly imp that was perching on its lid, watching the scenery with interest. Well, they both survived. That's kind of comforting and disturbing a little bit. Bravid looked at the weasel and raised his eyebrows. And that's it, said Rincewind. The luggage caught up with us. Don't ask me how. Is there any more wine? The weasel picked up the empty wineskin. I think you've had just about enough wine this night, he said. Bravid's forehead wrinkled. Gold is gold, he said finally. How can a man with plenty of gold consider himself poor? You're either poor or rich. It stands to reason. Rincewind hiccuped. He was finding reason rather difficult to hold on to. Well, he said, what I think is, the point is, well, you know, octiron? The two adventurers nodded. The strange iridescent metal was almost as highly valued in the lands around the Circle Sea as sapient pearwood, and was about as rare. A man who owned a needle made of octiron would never lose his way, since it always pointed to the hub of the Discworld, being acutely sensitive to the disc's magical field. It would also miraculously darn his socks. That's wonderful. Okay. I need to make another video and keep reading.